Hey guys, Andrew Davidson here, and welcome back to another As Per My Ability video. It's good to see you. It's good to have you here with us. If you like what we do here at As Per My Ability, if you like our videos, if you like our content, if you like board games in general, please do us a favor. Comment, like, subscribe, do all that fun YouTube stuff. Make sure you hit the bell so you get notifications when we post new videos. We appreciate everything that you guys do to help our channel grow. Putting all that stuff aside, it is currently about 1:15 o'clock in the morning right now. The weather outside is currently snowing / raining / sleeting. Is that a word? Sleeting? Is that a thing? So anyways, the point being is that I'm going to do my best at 1:30 in the morning to turn on my YouTube charisma so that we can make it through this video together. And I will see you on the other side where I'll be able to say, "It's good to be here with you, Sam, at the end of all things." So hopefully you'll stick around. Hopefully I'll get some caffeine in me and we'll make it through this video. But for now, let's roll that sweet intro. Hey, welcome back everybody. I got some caffeine in me during the intro, so I'm feeling good. I'm feeling awake now. I'm feeling like I can do this video. I can do it. You can do it. So let's do it together. Yeah, that's a little awkward. The title of today's video is 10 Historical Games. Now notice I didn't say top 10 historical games, and allow me to wax eloquent a little bit before we get into the actual list. Now I am surrounded by board games right now. You can't tell, on my table I have games set up. What I want to talk about before we get started is that these games are not presented in any way, shape, or form in any type of an order. They're not presented in a historical, linear way. They're not categorized. They're not like number 10 is my favorite, number 1 is my least favorite, or vice versa. I did look at 3 criteria that the games needed to meet in order to be on this list. Criteria number 1. All the games on this list have a very strong thematic tie with the gameplay. I will tell you a game that did not make this list. It is a game by Blue Orange, which is one of my favorite game designing companies, and it's called New York 1901. In New York 1901, you are basically building skyscrapers. Well, first you're trying to get the land to build skyscrapers, and you have all these Tetris type pieces that represent buildings. And where you build them on the board will matter in regards to points and scoring. And there are certain spots in New York that pay out bigger than other spots. And it's really essentially just a Tetris game. There's not much of a thematic tie in New York 1901. Now that doesn't mean that it's a bad game. It's pretty simplistic. I would say if you're looking for something that is Ticket to Ride value, but with a little step up in complexity, New York 1901 is a great game to move on to. It's not going to be on this list. Criteria number 2. All the games have actual, like, real names and dates and faces and events and stuff like that. They're going to have either through cards or through flavor text. All of the games are going to really have a good, real strong historical feel to them. Using my example of New York 1901, New York technically is a real place, and 1901 was technically a real year. But that's all that the game has going for it in regards to this list. So all the games that I'm talking about today, they will satisfy number 2. They will have actual people from the time period. They will reference events from the time period. They will reference settings and locations from the time period in some way or another, either through narration or flavor text or what have you. So that's criteria number 2. Criteria number 3 is that all these games are accessible. And accessible means a couple of things. First of all of these games are available for purchase. None of these games are out of print or incredibly hard to find. I found all of these on Amazon. So everything that you are going to see in this video, I was able to track down on Amazon.com. The other part of the accessible criteria that I looked at is that they're easy to play. Now, granted, we got 10 games here, so there's going to be some degradation and some variables in easy to play. But I think all 10 of these games, you could sit down and you could learn with your friends in an afternoon. You could learn these games. They're not that difficult. They don't take that long to play. They're not that complex. They're actually, come here. Come here. I don't know if you know this, but there's a group of people out there called war gamers that play these war games that are so convoluted. They're so complicated. The turns take so long that the game takes longer to play than the actual war that they're simulating. Those games will not be on this list. So there you have it, guys. There is the criterion that I used to pick these top 10 games. I guess I shouldn't say top 10, because remember, these are in really no particular order. So now that we've got all the preamble out of the way, let's get into the actual list. And let's start with number 10. To start off our list, I'm going to give a little caveat by saying I do apologize for people watching this video that really want to know more about these games. I am not going to be going over the mechanisms in the games that I'm talking about. I'm not going to be talking about the gameplay. I'm just going to show off the game, talk about its history, and then we're going to move on. Because if that were to happen, you'd be watching this video until next Tuesday. And if you're watching this video on Tuesday, then congratulations. You're already done. Starting off this list, in April of 1912, they created a gigantic ship that was unsinkable that ended up sinking in 1912. And we have number 10, Titanic, the board game. Guys, I can't do that. Titanic, I can't do this. I can't talk about Titanic, the board game. How could that even be on this list? Number 10 and number 9 on this list are going to get our two big wars out of the way, World War I, or the Great War, and World War II. So starting off at number 10 is a World War I game called The Grizzled. Now, this is the Armistice edition of the game. You can buy a very simple copy of The Grizzled. This Armistice edition is the campaign game. So it's not necessarily a legacy game, but it is a campaign game, meaning you play through it once and you've essentially played the whole game. The story of The Grizzled is that you are all cooperatively working to get through the Great War, to survive. It's a card game. You are all from the same small French village that's been drafted into the army. You're all bestest friends. Like, I don't know, maybe you all went to high school together, or you shared the same girlfriend or something. But you have a very, very strong connection with your other players, and you're trying to help each other survive the horrors and the gas attacks and the barrages of World War I. So that's my World War I pick. It's at number 10 The Grizzled, or The Grizzled Armistice Edition. So number 9 is going to be my World War II pick for this list. Now, unfortunately, I do not have a version of the base game because it's currently engaged, for lack of better terms. So I don't have it to show off. Hopefully I'll just kind of put a picture of it. But here is an expansion that I'll use. Anyways, the game is called Memoir 44. This is not the base game, but the base game is called Memoir 44. In Memoir 44, it's basically Axis and Allies that is zoomed in on the actual ground troops. And so everything that you're playing, everything that you set up, one person's going to play the Allies, one person's going to play the Axis or the Germans, and you are going to be setting up actual scenarios from World War II. It's an incredibly easy system to learn. It's basically kind of dice combat with some card play and things like that. Memoir 44 is my favorite war game of all time so far. Haven't found one that's been as fun, as quick, and as easy to play since then. So number 9 is Memoir 44. I call the German player. Number 8 on this list is a area influence game called World's Fair 1893. In World's Fair, this took place in Chicago in 1893, of course. Actually, this Ferris wheel is still up and running in Chicago. What World's Fair was is it was a fair where a bunch of people got together. They put exhibits together. Think of it like a state park fair. It's a fair, but it had to deal with science and technology. So a lot of innovative things were being shown off and were being displayed for the common man, for lack of better terms. In this game, you are just trying to do area influence to try to control certain parts of the park, and that's about all I'm going to say. There are actual people in this game. There's some actual flavor text, and that satisfies the criteria number 2. The people are pretty cool in this game. So number 8 is World's Fair 1893. I think it's fair to say, I think we all can agree as Americans, if you grew up in America or if you live in America right now, that there are some tragic things in American history. And so number 8 is one of those. I do have one other one on the list that will show up later. But the first one is called Unforgiven, the Lincoln Assassination Trial. Abraham Lincoln was the 16th president of the United States. He went to the Ford Theater to see Our American Cousin, which is a play, and as he sat in his box, John Wilkes Booth shot him in the back of the head. Booth ended up jumping down to the stage where he broke a leg or an ankle or something like that. He ended up riding off. He got caught and shot down. But what people don't know is that there was an actual assassination trial because there was a group of people, of what they would say conspirators, to kill Lincoln. One of them being a female. So there were 3 guys and 1 woman that were put on trial for the assassination. Now, as I already said, John Wilkes Booth is the actual assassinator of Abraham Lincoln. He got gunned down. He never faced a trial. But the other 4 that were part of the conspiracy were put on trial, and that's what you're doing in this game. This game has all the jurors, which were military guys. They tried it as a military trial. All the jurors have the names, the faces, the dates, the setting. This is an actual event, and it is a 2-player sort of back and forth game. One player is going to be the prosecution, one person's going to be the defense, and you're going to try to just accomplish the win condition for the game. Unforgiven, the Lincoln Assassination Trial. Number 6 on this list is another tragic. We're just going back-to-back tragedies in American history. And my number 6 on this list is a game called Freedom, the Underground Railroad. Where to begin? So slavery was a thing in America until 1865, with the 13th Amendment ratifying that freed the slaves. There was a whole war fought over this. You may have heard of it, called the Civil War. Freedom, the Underground Railroad, is a cooperative game where you are basically trying to help slaves escape from the South and make it to the North, up into Canada, where they will be free. Now, the Underground Railroad was an actual thing that started before the Civil War. It actually ran through the Civil War itself until the ratification of the 13th Amendment. Now, the Underground Railroad, is kind of a misnomer. None of it was really underground, and it wasn't really a railroad, but it was a system, it was a route of getting slaves from the South up into Canada where they would be saved. So it was kind of a Schindler's List, kind of saving slaves, getting them to run away in the night. And they was usually headed up by a woman, a black woman named Harriet Tubman. I have a huge respect for Harriet Tubman, who made that trip over 60 times over the course of, I don't even know how long. Harriet Tubman is in this game. There are also a lot of other historical figures, Frederick Douglass and others, that are in this game. Harriet Tubman actually went on, as she grew older, to help in the women's suffrage movement in the 1920s, 1910s. And so number 6 is Freedom, the Underground Railroad. Well, we might as well get them all out of the way. So number 5 is another little piece of American badness from history. And number 5 is called Watergate. Now, Watergate is a scandal that happened in 72, and it was under the President Nixon's administration, where they were wiretapping, and they were doing some illegal things in the building called Watergate. It's a Watergate scandal. This game is a 2-player only game. One person will be playing the Nixon administration, trying to, look innocent, trying to make the scandal go away. The other player will be playing an investigative journalist who is trying to expose, find more information to expose the Watergate scandal. In actual American history, we all know, I am not a crook. They were going to impeach President Nixon. He decided to resign and just step down before any of that stuff happened. So Watergate definitely takes on the idea of this tug of rope back and forth between 2 players, and that is number 5, Watergate. Also a really great game. I've been teased by a lot of my students that I'm old enough to remember the events of the next game for number 4 on our list. I'm actually not old enough, not even close. But number 4 is called 1960, Making of the President. Now, my current copy of, we're just going to call it 1960, is not here. I don't have it. It's out. It's lent out to somebody who is using it at the moment. So I don't have a physical copy, but I'm sure you'll see a picture of it in a post. And so 1960 is a 2-player game, 2-player only game, where one person is taking on the role of the young Democratic John F. Kennedy, and the other person takes on the role of the Republican Richard Nixon, who we just actually talked about in Watergate. In the game, you are trying to fight over the land for the electronic Freudian slip. Where is my head at? Players are trying to gain the electoral vote in order to win the game. Now, I am going to say this. I promised myself I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to do it anyways. This game, 1960, and the next one on this list, I would say, are on a slight upper echelon of a learning curve. Now, I don't want to deter you from not checking these games out or buying them or getting into them, but I would do myself kind of a remiss if I didn't say that this one and the next one, you're going to take some time. They're 2-player games, and I'd say they're a little bit more complicated than the others that I've mentioned on this list so far. So 1960 is a lot of back and forth trying to control areas. The map is of America, and you're trying to get your influence into certain spots to win electoral college, to win the presidency of 1960, which we all know went to the Democratic John F. Kennedy, who was then assassinated and killed a few years later. So, on that note, number 3. Number 3 on this list is made by the same company, the same design team, and same company of 1960. That's why I said I've placed these two games on a little bit of an upper echelon for a learning curve. Number 3 on this list is called Twilight Struggle, and it is the Cold War. It basically is a area influence game where one person will be taking on the role of the good old democratic Americans and democracy and yay, while the other player takes on communist China, Russia. So you have like a communist player, and then you have like the democratic player. This one, unlike 1960, where the board is only America, this one, the board is the entire world. And so you are using some influence. You are playing cards that are actual events, like the Marshall Plan. You have actual events from actual history that you play to do things on the board to change the influence. What you're trying to do is you're trying to spread communism, or you're trying to spread democracy, reduce communism. Again, it's like 1960. It's got that back and forth. Oh. Let's just kind of get some exercise in. And so Twilight Struggle is a longer game. It's very strategic. It's for 2 players only. And it's probably one of my favorites. If you can sit down and tolerate the learning curve, it is one of my favorite games. I really enjoy the back and forth here. The cool thing about the game is that it scores different regions at random times. You don't necessarily know what part of the board is going to score, so you don't know where to really focus on putting all your influence out, or do you put all your influence out? There's also a space race track. There's a lot going on in this game, and it's hella fun. So number 3 is Twilight Struggle. Number 2 is about corrupt Democrats. Those corrupt Democrats. Number 2 on this list is Tammany Hall. Tammany Hall takes place in New York, in Tammany Hall, where a bunch of Democrats under boss Tweed, William Tweed, who was a Democrat, who was fixing elections and rigging elections. And how that was happening was during the 1840s, all the way through the Civil War, and afterwards, even into the 1900s, America had a huge influx of Irish immigrants, German immigrants, some British immigrants. We were just flooding. America was just flooding over these decades. And William Tweed saw these people and was basically like, I'll give you some sack of potatoes if you vote for this guy that I want you to vote for. Hey, I'll buy you a free drink if you just step next door and vote for me, vote this way. Back in the 1840s, 1850s, there was no such thing as ID. No one had an official ID. And so when you went to vote, you would just vote. I mean, this guy, there's like a story of a guy, he was an Irish guy, who literally got off a boat. He stepped off the boat in New York. William Tweed, one of his mongrel idiots or whatever, bought him a drink predicated on the notion of that he would go vote for a specific name, someone that was Democratic, that Tweed wanted, there he is, wanted in power. Also, we get the idea of the no-shave November type thing, because the guys would grow out their beards and they would go to vote, and then they'd go home and they'd cut some of their beard, they'd go vote again, and they'd cut some more of their beard, and then they'd vote again, and then they'd get down to the mustache and like the handlebars, and they'd go vote again. In fact, I heard one story of a guy who voted 17 times by doing the beard routine. Because again, you have to remember, there was no such thing as an actual government-issued ID. You just gave your name down and just made up your name. And if you looked different, if there was no way for poll people to catch you or to, figure out who you were, they just said, there you go. So the Democrats at the time, under Tammany Hall, took huge advantage of these Irish immigrants and the beards, and they just paid off the right people. They were incredibly corrupt. William Tweed was responsible for a lot of this. He made a lot of money by scamming New York City through building some buildings, and then he got money for it, but they only ended up using like a fourth of the money because he found a way to pay off. Anyways, Tammany Hall is a area influence game where you're trying to influence different boroughs of Manhattan, or New York, I should say, and if you do that, you will get to be the mayor of New York City. If you want a little bit more of a visual representation, Tammany Hall is not the focal point, but it is featured, and William Tweed is kind of featured in Martin Scorsese's absolutely brilliant movie called Gangs of New York. So if you want to go check out Gangs of New York, Tammany Hall is referenced, and you'll see the Tammany Hall riots in that movie. So if you don't want to play the game, or if you want to learn some more about the history behind this game before you play it, Gangs of New York, Leonardo DiCaprio, great movie. Go check that one out. That is number 2. Let's get to number 1 on the list. Alrighty, folks. Number 1 on this list is a game that I kind of saved as number 1. I know I told you I wasn't going to play favorites, and I didn't. Some of these games I like more than the others that were higher, that were lower, whatever. But I wanted to save this one for last because not only have I watched a movie about this event and about these people, I listened to an audiobook about this event and about these people. So number 1 with a bullet is Tesla versus Edison, War of Currents. So, for those of you that don't know, Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison were both inventors. Nikola Tesla invented AC current, or alternating current, as a form of electricity. Edison invented DC current, hence where we get the name for the band AC/DC. I bet you didn't know that, did you? What ended up happening is that Westinghouse, this guy named Westinghouse, got behind Tesla and started funding him because AC current was more efficient than DC current. But Thomas Edison obviously wanted his electricity to power these cities because then he got paid money for it. He was trying to make money. I mean, Edison had failed invention after failed invention. We attribute Edison as, creating electricity, creating the light bulb, when in reality, he just created one way of creating electricity and lighting a light bulb. Tesla also created a way called alternating current, which was much more cost efficient than direct current. Direct current required a lot of generators to be placed closely together, whereas alternating current, you could have generators, farther and farther away and have, the same amount of current. It wasn't as strong, but it still worked. What happened with Tesla and Edison is Edison did what we would call, I guess today, a smear campaign. Smear. That's weird. Is it smear? Where does that word come from? Smear. Smear. He did a smear campaign against Tesla where he made up a bunch of stuff about Tesla himself, about alternating current. There was actually a fake news story posted in all of the news about a individual, I think it was a black man, who was exposed to alternating current and killed him. It was actually a fake story. It was just some dead guy that they just made up a story. But anyways, the whole world sees that on the newspaper, front page of the newspaper, and it's like this alternating current, this Tesla machine. It's so unsafe. It killed a man. You do not want AC in your town. Do not let AC into your town. Anyways, as history went on, we all know Thomas Edison ended up winning. Tesla was actually kind of kicked out of the country, and he moved to America for a while. This game represents the idea behind having stocks in electricity and which electricity that you're going to go for and sell. It's essentially a stock market game. There is a Tesla versus Edison duel, which is a 2-player only game. This is a 5-player game. And I recommend duel in the sense of if you want, again, that pull back and forth. I'm going to play Edison, you're going to play Tesla, and then maybe next game we'll switch it around. Tesla versus Edison, especially the dual version, is a really good one to look at to find some of the history. There's J.P. Morgan in the game, there's Westinghouse in the game, there are others in the game, including Mark Twain. Mark Twain was actually someone involved in the whole AC-DC current war. But I'll leave that for you to find out on your own. So that's everything that we have for this list. That's number 1, Tesla versus Edison, War of Currents, or Tesla versus Edison duel. That's where I'm going to leave us today. Thank you everyone for sticking out this video, hanging in there with me. It's great to talk about these games with you. If you have any games that you like that are historic based, leave them in the comments. Maybe we'll get a little discussion and a little bit of a discourse about historical games. What are some of your favorite games that are set in history? Comment below, let me know. But as for now, my name is Andrew Davidson. You have been watching As Per My Ability, and I will see each and every one of you at the next video.